Welcome to Startuprad.io, your podcast and YouTube blog covering the German startup scene with news, interviews, and live events.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is Joe from Startuprad.io. Welcome to another episode of Startuprad.io, this time with the Young Presidents Organization in partnership. But I would first like to welcome Max here. Hey, how you doing?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. You are right now recording from Switzerland, but you're a German guy and you originally built up your company with headquarters in London, right?
So my first company was headquartered in Zurich, and my second company was headquartered in London. Yeah.
Great. Let me first tell a little bit about the Young Presidents Organization, founded nearly 75 years ago. YPO is now the world's largest leadership organization, representing more than 35,000 chief executives across 150 countries. Members are connected by the shared belief that the world needs better leaders and that their business can be a driving force for good. Each YPO member has achieved significant leadership success at an early age. They lead businesses and organizations that collectively employ more than 22 million people around the world and generate over 9 trillion with a T US dollar in combined revenue. That's pretty impressive. We have you here today to talk about Finimize. That's an investment community with close to 2 million investors involved. And then you also do have a partner network. And then you estimate you reach almost around 40 million members, right?
Correct. Yes.
Great. So let us first start a little bit at the start. You studied in St. Andrews and University of Virginia. Can you tell us a little bit about the studies and did you play golf somewhere?
So I studied in St. Andrews. As you say, it's the home of golf. Unfortunately, I never really made use of it. I played once on the old course, and that was it. In hindsight, that was a big mistake. I should have taken advantage of that way more. But I studied economics and international relations. Those were the two areas I was interested in. It was also kind of interesting for me, a little bit of left brain, right brain. Economics was very mathematics heavy, and then international relations was very, word heavy. And then I did a year abroad in the US, studying at the University of Virginia, same subjects, which was always a dream of mine to study in the US for a while. I went to, in Berlin, a German-American high school, and so I always had this connection to the US, and was able to do both thanks to the University of St. Andrews.
And you co-found, so basically you studied there, you went through a few different positions, but what is most of interest for me, you co-founded dinedeal.ch, meaning yourdeal.ch. It's a website, an e-commerce website in Switzerland. It was at one point the largest independent e-commerce platform in the country. And at the time, it was the fastest growing startup in Switzerland. And you also, that's another interesting part, exited it with around 100 million in annual revenue 3 years later. Can you take us through the story?
Yeah. So maybe I'll start even earlier. So when I was first of all, I'm part of the generation that is the last generation that remembers life before the World Wide Web.
Me too.
Yeah. And so I very much remember the day where my parents got access to the internet through those 56K modems, etc. And it completely changed my life. And I knew I wanted to do something with the internet. I was always in school. I was the kid who had a website first, and all this stuff. It was always something I was really fascinated by. The reason why I mentioned this is I was never really planning on becoming an entrepreneur. This was the way to go and work on the internet, because back in the day there weren't that many, certainly not in Europe, there weren't that many startups or internet companies. My last year of studying in my undergraduate, I did an internship over the summer at eBay. eBay back in the day was like a really big platform They owned Mobile.de, etc. And it just reminded me of how much I loved the internet. Before that, I checked out, banks and consulting firms, etc. But that final year just really reminded me I love working on the internet. It's just the most exciting thing you can do. And so when I came out of university, I was basically looking to just work on an internet project. And a few folks that I knew in Zurich, they were starting this e-commerce business, and they asked me if I wanted to join. And without really thinking about it too much, I just said yes. And I moved to Zurich, and I started the firm with them. And we started off as a daily deal platform, and then later transformed that into a full-on e-commerce business. We had our own warehouse, our own inventory, and to this day have basically transformed it into a full-on e-commerce business, and then sold that to one of the largest media houses in Switzerland. And then interestingly, I saw a press release a couple of months ago. It was just sold to, or they just sold it on to a private equity firm. And so it's still running, it's still growing, it's profitable. And it was a fantastic learning experience for me in how to build a company, how to scale a company, how to scale it back down, the full experience. And also, one of the lessons that I took from it was how important it is to set the right culture from the start, which is something that I then really tried to emphasize at Finimize. So yeah, it was a wonderful experience with many ups and downs, as you can imagine.
Then I saw on your LinkedIn CV, by the way, linked down here in the show notes, there was something like between almost a year, like 3/4 of a year, between you leaving Finimize, exiting the company, and dinedeal, exiting dinedeal and starting the company we're now talking about, Finimize. A lot of entrepreneurs inspire to do an exit. I have a few questions. For example, how did it feel for you to do the exit? What did you do in between? Plus the question, very subjective question. How did it feel the last time you walked out of those offices and knowing you won't return as your company?
Well, to answer your last question, it was actually a nice feeling in a way, because I felt proud of what we've achieved. I felt we were handing the firm over. We'd recruited successors who were more capable than we were, in my view, and feels like we handed it over to competent pairs of hands. Mm-hmm. And it also felt refreshing, because I remember very much that literally the next, I think maybe my last day was like on a Friday, and then on Monday it's always team meetings and C-level updates, etc. And your calendar just gets so packed that you basically run out of time to really think. Oftentimes, you need to be very proactive to manage that, so that you do have time to think. I remember that Monday, I felt really excited that I didn't have a single meeting in my calendar. And I started thinking about this idea that then turned into Finimize. I also really got into sports. I did a triathlon with Ironman. So I did a lot of things that I didn't really have the time to do before. So it was nice, because it just felt like a new chapter. Is probably the best way to describe it.
And what did you do in between? Collecting actively ideas for your next venture? Did you travel? Did you spend time with the family?
So I actually already had the idea in my head for Finimize while I was still working at dinedeal, but I started to then work on it basically on the Monday following my last day. But I didn't actually create the company, I think, until August 2016. So I was kind of dabbling around with it a little bit, doing this sort of closed beta approach. I built a website in WordPress myself, much to the dismay of our engineers today, who had to then untangle all the stuff that I put together. I sent around to my email contacts, hey, I'm doing this new project. So I was already sort of actively working on the idea of Finimize. I hadn't sort of gotten to a point where I was like, this is the thing I want to work on. And then a couple of months later, I did, and I created that. I created the company that then later on became Finimize. Yeah.
I see.
So I didn't take time off, is your question, which I'm in a way I'm not too unhappy about, because I was at the time still very young. I didn't have any kids or anything. And so I had a lot of energy and a lot of ambition and a lot of, was willing to sacrifice a lot and commit a lot of my time to it. And I think you only have that kind of a mindset and freedom when you are in those sort of 20s, maybe early 30s. And so I'm glad that I took the initiative right away and grabbed the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. You already hinted, Finimize started out as a WordPress website. Then you got into newsletter. I'm curious, how did you get your first clients, and how did you evolve from WordPress to newsletter to actually doing meetups?
So it all actually happened very organically. And the starting point for all of it really was a personal experience that I had. I went to go speak to a financial advisor. Everybody tells you when you're young, you need to be saving some money. And so what I did is I had a standing order for my salary, and I put it onto a savings account every month. And after a while, I'd built up some savings. And I went to go speak to a financial advisor saying, okay, now I have savings. What should I be doing with it? And what she did is she basically was trying to sell me all of the products that they had. And I very quickly realized that this was a sales pitch rather than proper advice, genuine advice. And ultimately what it boiled down to is that it was an information asymmetry problem. The financial world, the financial institutions have access to all the information, and us as retail investors don't have access to that. And coming back to this fascination for the internet, if the internet has done one thing, it's reduce and eradicate information asymmetries. It's done that for multiple different industries. If you think about the travel industry, you used to go to a travel agency to book your trip. Then along came Expedia, Kayak, etc. They cut out that agent, and now you can access all of it yourself, and you can book it yourself. And there's multiple different industries where that's happened. And so I thought, okay, well, this also has to be possible in the world of financial information. We should be able to give everybody access to this world of and universe of financial information, and that was sort of the starting insight. Mm-hmm. So then what I did is I posted on my Facebook back in the day when people were using Facebook. I posted on Facebook, hey, I'm thinking about doing this finance site, and I want to. The idea was I want to just educate and inform people, just 3 minutes a day, super low barriers to entry for them. And then over time, people get more and more confident, more and more comfortable. You demystify this whole world of finance. It's sort of this concept of, taking baby steps or tiny habits to start having proper habits that then will allow you to have good investing habits, etc. And so I said, hey, I'm looking for these people who can produce some content for me. I had like 3 to 5 people from my network who ended up saying, yes, happy to do so. We then started to create this content. I published it on WordPress because it was an easy way for me to get the content out. And as you might expect, nobody went onto the website because nobody found out about it. So we had a website, but we didn't have any traffic. And so then I said, okay, well, let me just email everybody that I know. And so I literally I downloaded all of my email contacts from every network that I had. And I just emailed people saying, hey, I'm now working on this new project called Finimize. Check it out. Here's the website, finimize.com. And I was using MailChimp at the time. and I could see how many people had opened the email. And then I could see how many people had clicked onto the website. And I saw that the open rate was really high, but nobody really clicked to go to the website. And so one day I said, well, why don't we just take the content from the website and put it all into the email? And that created the newsletter. And so I continued to track the open rates, the click rates, etc. And those were, from day one, were really, really high. So I knew that the content was good. And I knew that the email was the right format because it's so ingrained into our daily habits that people go check their inboxes. And so that's what then gave life to the newsletter. So then what gave life to the meetups, which was your second question? That actually happened very organically as well, where I said, I think at the time we had maybe 50,000 people or something like that who had subscribed to our newsletter at that point. And I said, it'd be cool to meet the people. Like 50,000, I remember, that's like a small football stadium of people. And I thought, that's, it's not nothing. It would be cool to meet these people. And so then we said, hey, we're all going to meet in a pub in East London. And so we all went to this pub, and I was really surprised. There were like 50 people who showed up. And then I said, okay, well, that's kind of interesting. And so then I organized more and organized it kind of in different locations. And then after a while, and we would always post about it in the newsletter. And then people started to reach out to us and said, well, hey, can you do this meetup in Sydney, or can you do this meetup in New York? And I said, I'd love to, but I can't fly around the world hosting these meetups. And so if you want, though, you can host it. And we created this ambassador program where people could apply to become a Finimize host, and they could then host the meetup in their city. And that just really then took off. So we were basically hosting a meetup on average every single day of the work week, in all over the world, like in Lagos, in Sydney, in LA, everywhere people were hosting meetups. And it just became this kind of movement that was really, really powerful. And so it was all about just leaning in when our customers and our users came to us. It was all about just leaning in and listening to them and trying to serve them better. So that's how that all came about.
I see. So you built a community. I was wondering, what strategies and steps did you initially take to like attract and engage the first members of your investment community? And how can you ensure sustainable growth for something? Because a lot of people out there are still talking about building a community, building an entrepreneur community. This will become a hub, and so on and so forth. But it looks like a lot of people out there don't know how to build a community.
So I think the first point is to define or clarify what is a community and what's a follower. So I hear a lot of companies, they say, yeah, we have a community, but really what they were referring to is they have a lot of followers on Instagram or on Facebook or whatever. That's not a community. That's a company that has people following it, and the company broadcasts to their followers. A community is when the members connect amongst each other, and there's a value creation that happens amongst the members. And it has a certain degree of self-organization. There's a different spectrum of how self-organized it can be. Like if you think about like a Reddit community, they basically don't have any rules, and you can just publish and do whatever you want. Then you have maybe more strict ones like, for example, Weight Watchers or Alcoholics Anonymous. Those are also communities, but they have very, very strict guidelines. We were probably somewhere in the middle, where we gave people a lot of freedom, but we were very strict on who we let in as a host and what they were able to do. So we had a real playbook that we would give them. And so the way that we did it is we would always have this roster of ambassadors. They would apply to become an ambassador with us. We tested for a while if we could pay them, to then see if we can get more hosts and more ambassadors. And what we realized is that it actually didn't work. So people had to be genuinely interested and intrinsically motivated to doing this. And then so we would have this roster, and then we basically designed this playbook, and we have community managers who work at Finimize. And those community managers would essentially just manage the hosts and make sure they understand the playbook, make sure that they understand how to run a meetup, make sure that they get good guest speakers and stuff like that create value at the events. And then really cool things happened. Like we had an Indian host. Just to give you maybe two examples, we had an Indian host who. Oftentimes people ask me, who are these people? He was working at JP Morgan in India, and he was so interested in what we were doing at Finimize that he decided to go on a road show through India. So he went to 3 different cities in India to host Finimize meetups. All, we don't pay, we don't have any kind of budget. It was all 100% organized by him. And then we had another community host in Hong Kong during the Hong Kong riots. He organized a meetup that was so popular. People, even though there were the riots in the city, there was a queue around the entire block to get into the meetup. It's like a rock concert. So a lot of cool things happened the more that we engaged with the community and let people get involved with it.
Did you write something like a playbook for doing that? Or would you say there is something like an author out there, a blogger, who really understands that stuff and shares good insights for that? Because otherwise people have to rely on the few sentences you just gave us.
No, so we have a playbook internally, but we never published it, if that's what you're asking. So it's not public. Because to a certain extent, I guess that was part of the secret sauce of how we did it. But I think at the end of the day, it's also not really something that you could duplicate or replicate, because it's very much depends on the vertical that you're in and the people that you're working with. I think at the end of the day, it's just, building things that people will think are cool and that they want to get involved with, and then figuring out what's the best way forward. And I think that's how I would do it. I think the thing maybe that works for everybody that I would say was important is this. It's been talked about a lot, this concept of doing things that don't scale. So in the beginning, for example, some of the first couple hundred users or couple thousand users that signed up to Finimize, I signed up personally on my iPhone by going to university campuses. And I would just literally stand in front of the library and I would say to people, I would give them a 10-second pitch on what Finimize is. And then I would have them sign up on my iPhone. And over time, then, we started to get more and more people to do what I did. But things like that, when I tell the story now to other founders that I meet, they think it's crazy that's something that they would spend their time on, but that's stuff that worked. So it's starting off with things that don't scale, and then once you see that it works, figuring out how can you now scale it to a larger audience.
What were like the biggest challenges that you faced in building and especially scaling your investment community? Because it's always pretty tough to scale a community. And did you learn some crucial lessons there?
Yeah, so we had the classic experience of we had to always find new growth channels. So it was not that like one growth channel got us from 0 to 2 million or 0 to 1 million or 0 to 500,000 even. Like we genuinely had to go and so the first ones I just described how we got the first couple hundred. Then I found some bloggers who would blog about Finimize. Gave us a couple thousand. Then I started to find other newsletters, and we did some partnerships like barter deals. Hey, if you talk about us, we'll talk about you. Then that gave us, and over time, those partners got bigger and bigger and bigger. We had a big partnership with the Financial Times at one point, where we had like a full ad in the print version of the Financial Times, and in return, we promoted the Financial Times and Finimize, and stuff like that worked. And then once we've gotten to a couple 100,000 or maybe even 1 million, then we started to do paid marketing as well. So up until that point, everything that we did was zero paid marketing. We never spent a single dollar or euro on any kind of marketing. It was all non-paid. But we'd always have to find a new growth channel, because once a growth channel worked, after a while, it just the percentage increase, or the sort of the marginal increase, just wasn't meaningful enough anymore, right? So if you would have a partnership that would get you maybe 500 signups, if you're at 1 million signups, getting 500 is not really worth your time anymore. So you need to find a different distribution channel that would get you access to maybe 50,000. And so it's this constant reevaluating and searching for new distribution channels.
Would you recommend a new entrepreneur also to try at first to scale without paid advertising, paid marketing? Because if it works unpaid, it'll work paid as well, but it doesn't necessarily hold true the other way around.
There's other founders who I know who did paid very early on. And I think maybe then you increase the velocity of your product development, because you get learnings faster. On the flip side, you also, doing paid marketing, especially today, it's very competitive and it's a discipline of itself. So I think you can really go down the rabbit hole of doing paid marketing, because maybe your CAC isn't the right one, and then you try to optimize it, and then all of a sudden you're spending 80% of your time on doing paid marketing. And so if you do the non-paid channels, it's more hustling. It's more creativity involved, but it's also, I think, a more durable way of building the business, because as we all know, you just cannot be dependent on paid channels. And sometimes what I witness with founders who just start up a new business is they immediately go to paid marketing. That's distribution is paid marketing in their head. And I think that's the mistake. And sometimes people aren't willing to hustle. I literally, like I said, was standing in the rain with an iPhone in my hand to sign up people. That's, I think, the kind of hustle that can allow you to grow without spending money. And sometimes that's necessary.
That's actually a picture that'll stick. When somebody asks me about what you remember from the interview from Max from Finimize, I say, well, I imagine him standing in front of a library in the rain, holding up his iPhone, giving 10-second pitches.
And it was like that. Like, we were at a university, and they came to us and kicked us off the campus because they said we don't have a permit to be on there. So there's a lot of fun experiences there.
And one point is to get new members of your community. The other piece is to keep the members of your community. How do you continuously provide value to your community members, and how do you keep them engaged and active? Because I realize with a lot of social approaches, there's a wave really at the start, and then it kind of teeters out a very long way. Community websites, they're very active in the very beginning, and then they become a kind of digital graveyard because nothing is up to date anymore. How do you keep that going?
I mean, for us, it was all the starting point for us was always the content. So the content that we produced in-house, that we then distributed through our newsletter, and then later on we distributed it through our app and through our website. That was what got people in the door. So we always had this thesis of come for the content, stay for the community. And so people would come in, and because they were genuinely finding value in the content. Because what we were doing, and what we still to this day are doing, is we're creating high quality investing information at an affordable price point. So before Finimize, there was two options you had. One was you could buy a very expensive subscription of Bloomberg or something like that, and you could get access to high quality investing information. That's prohibitively expensive for most retail investors. The other option is it's free. You go to free channels like social media, or maybe on Google you'll find something. But the problem with those is on social media, there's a lot of junk out there. And for the Google searches, you're going to find content that's monetized through affiliate links, and so it's never going to be unbiased, and it's never going to give you genuine, real, high quality information. And so we always want to be high quality investing information at an affordable price point. And so because of that, people came to us, and then we said, all right, now you're part of a community. And so one of the things that we always found in the product was, if we can get someone who consumes content to engage with the community, they're 3 times more likely to be retained. So that's why this thesis of come for the content, stay for the community has always been this guiding principle of Finimize.
I'm not trying to bother you with individual questions about different stocks right now, because I don't think that makes sense, especially seeing our publication calendar, which is jam-packed already. And there is more than a month between the recording and the actual publication. So we're now in early August, but can you give us a little bit broader overview of what we see right now as the investment climate, especially turning to equities in Europe and the US? Because on the one hand side, you had first Corona, then the Russian invasion, then the inflation following it. Then you had the AI hype with big companies, especially Nvidia, pulled ahead way above all the others. And now there seems to be this hype is teetering out, and what's next? Or does it make a comeback in fall?
I think it was maybe Warren Buffett who said, if someone gives you a forecast, it tells you more about the forecaster than about the forecast itself, i.e., nobody's able to forecast what will happen. And so if you think about the biggest investors and the best investors in the world, whether it's a Warren Buffett, or recently I saw an interview with the founder of Co2, the private equity firm, who the founder also said, when asked what's the forecast, he said, happy to give you a forecast. And I know what I know for sure is that my forecast will not happen. And so with that disclaimer, I mean, it's at the beginning of the year. So we hosted maybe that's an interesting starting point. We host every year in December, at the start of December, we host the largest retail investor conference in the world online. Last year, we had Ray Dalio and Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan, as our keynote speakers. And I asked them all both, where are things going, et cetera. And Jamie Dimon was the one who was probably the most skeptical about a soft landing in the US. It does seem like now we are achieving a soft landing. Today, on the day of the recording, the Bank of England cut their interest rates for the first time since the pandemic. The Fed this week has indicated that they're going to likely also cut their interest rates in September. And so it does seem like the soft landing is happening. On the flip side, a lot of the growth, as you said, has been happening through these tech stocks. And so if you were to take the S&P not weighted, but actually equal weighting, i.e., how many companies there are of the 500, you get very, very different results, which shows you that this weighting really goes in favor of the tech stocks and probably distorts the picture of how the financial economy is doing, i.e., the other firms are not doing spectacularly well, but the average is being pulled up or pushed up because of these tech stocks. And so I guess there's a question of, how much of this was, how much of this tech run, bull run, will cool down. I think this week, Microsoft reported earnings, disappointing cloud results. And so perhaps there's a cooling down, but it seems like we're achieving a soft landing, perhaps a little bit of a bubbly feel to all of this that might cool down. And then I guess we'll have to see what's next.
Talking about what's next, you exited with Finimize to, it's pronounced Aberdeen, but it's spelled ABRDN, all in non-capital letters. I was wondering, what was the point they approached you? Was it just the right time you were looking to exit? Was it just an offer you just couldn't refuse? Talking like the Godfather here.
So it was definitely not we were not looking to sell. We were not running any kind of a process or anything. It was an interesting time where, for whatever reason, we started to get more and more and more approaches of potential acquirers. It's interesting. When we started off Finimize, I think a lot of people thought, financial content, why would you do that? And we would speak to big financial institutions and say to them, hey, you can buy our content through licensing agreements and you can use it. And they always said, no, we don't really need it. We have our own team. Like, our content team is larger than your whole company. And the funny thing is, now with most of them, we actually ended up working. And so there seems to have been this realization that, I always say, producing good content, and I'm sure you know this as well, Joe, because you produce content. Everybody can produce content. It's like everybody can produce music. That doesn't mean that you produce good music. And it's the same with content. It's the barriers, because of all the tools that exist. The barriers are so low. Everybody can produce content, and everybody thinks it's an easy discipline. But actually, if you want to do it well, if you want to have high engagement rates measured by open rates, measured by click rates, measured by retention, etc., that's a very difficult thing to do. And so anyway, that's an area where we really became the masters, and we really became the number one financial content solution in the market. And so I think that's perhaps also what caused people to look at us and say, hey, we'd love to have this discipline in-house, because people started to appreciate. And of course, it also coincided and was propelled by the rise of the retail investor, who we obviously catered to, and we want to inform them. It started off with new tooling, robo-advisors, brokers, etc. And now you're seeing it continue where BlackRock, Apollo, all those guys are basically saying, for us to achieve our AUM targets, we need to get the retail investors on board. Otherwise, we can't get it. Institutional isn't going to cut it for us anymore to really get to that next scale level. And so I think that's perhaps what drew a lot of people to us. And then Aberdeen specifically, made sense for us because we were able to grow our B2B network through them. Because obviously they have a huge client base in the financial world. And we can say, hey, because you're an Aberdeen client, you now also get access to some of the Finimize solutions, etc. And so it just made sense, number one, in terms of what we wanted to achieve, what they wanted to achieve, and then build a future from there.
I haven't seen a price. Did you ever disclose the price tag of the acquisition?
No, we did not. No.
When you've been talking, I've been writing down two pieces where you say you're talking to a big company and they say, well, our content marketing team is bigger than your whole company. I would have replied, well, that's a hint. You can downsize them.
Yeah, true.
I'm sorry, that was pretty mean. And AUM, for everybody who's not from asset management background, it means assets under management, which is a crucial size for an asset manager. It means how much money from other people they are managing, administrating, and it's depending on what kind of investment you do. It's very crucial to how much money you can earn, because usually the fees are calculated in a percentage point of those assets.
Correct.
I have a lot of questions on how you really evaluated Aberdeen, but we're running a little bit short on time. We only have 15 minutes left for the whole recording time here. So I was wondering, could you give us a broad overview of the steps you took as a due diligence to evaluate your potential buyer, what you did there. Like you look through, I'm sure through the financials, a lot of talks with the management team, getting a feel of how they're thinking, what they're focused on, and so on and so forth. And did you also have a list there, a checklist?
I mean, I think, selling a company is a very intensive process that typically takes somewhere around 6 months, and you basically don't do anything else. And that's how it was for us. And in these 6 months, I mean, the way it typically works is, excuse me, you typically get a non-binding offer. So, or someone approaches you, then they say, "Yeah, we're interested in buying you." You share a little bit of information with them, and then they can decide, "Yeah, we are interested in pursuing this," or "No, we're not interested in pursuing this." And so this is sort of the first milestone where they give you a non-binding offer that says, "Hey, we're interested." Maybe they give you the price, maybe some other terms in there. It's in the VC world, it's very much like the term sheet, right? So the term sheet in and of itself is an indicative piece of paper, but has no value. And then once you sign that, you basically go into, again, very analogous to the VC world. You basically give exclusivity to that partner, and then you basically open the kimono, is what we always said, and they really dive into everything.
Sorry, just picturing myself to open a kimono here. Sorry for the picture, guys.
So we opened our kimono, so you can picture that now. And as in doing all of this, you get to know each other, obviously, because it's not just you don't just obviously you have a data room and you have a lot of meetings and work, but you also go for dinner with the people that are looking to buy you. They want to get to know you personally. You want to get to know them personally, and you see, is this a fit or not? And so I think that's really how the whole thing develops, and how you get a feel for the other side. And this obviously goes both sides, right? So that's how it worked.
I'm sure there are a lot of checklists out there to do something like that. But as I said, we ran a little bit short on time, so let us go into our outlook. You always been talking about financial content here. What do you offer for fintech financial services companies? Well, maybe for fintechs, because they don't have like a pretty big content team there. For what could they get from you?
So what we offer to enterprise clients or B2B clients like fintechs or financial firms is an out-of-the-box solution for financial content that where the library spans from daily financial news, weekly financial news, insights, research reports, educational guides, the full suite. We produce something like 80 to 100 content pieces every single day in 29 languages now. And the reason why B2B clients work with us is because they use our content as an engagement tool for their retail investors. So we work with some of the biggest banks based out of the US, some of the biggest asset managers based out of Asia, and then also young startups who understand that content will help A, be an acquisition driver, and B, be a retention driver for their product. And with us, you get it all out of the box. It's tested. You know that it's engaging because we collect over 1 billion data points every year from our own community to make sure that our content does resonate. And you can either pull the content through a self-serve platform or through our API, and worry about building the rest of your product and making sure that you're best in class for when it comes to content.
For this, I assume you're not only using AI, but also people. Are you looking for talent?
Yes, we're always looking for talented people to join us on this journey. I would say specifically in the business development sales side. So if you're interested in selling solutions to financial institutions reach out to us, as well as on the content and engineering side.
I would like to close with 2 questions for you personally, because you're a serial entrepreneur. You already made 2, assumingly pretty good exits. What would be the next steps for you?
I mean, right now I'm very much focused on continuing to grow Finimize and specifically get our enterprise business onto the next level. We obviously have our B2C, but one of the key focus areas for us has been B2B. And what I will do beyond that, honestly, don't know yet. I'm not the kind of person who has a grand master plan. So when I did the e-commerce business, never would have thought that I would get into retail. At our online retail business, I built up the whole supply chain warehouse side of things. Up until that point, I've never even stepped foot into a warehouse. So I would have never thought I would be in retail. Equally, finance. I would have never thought I'd be in finance. And so when I see something that interests me, I try to lean in and I try to give it 100%. And then hopefully good things will happen. And so that's how I've been leading my life, approaching it. And as a result, I don't know what will happen.
And the final question, you have demonstrated a pretty good sense for business with what you did. So I would be curious, as a closing question, if you would start a business like today or in the next few months, what kind of business would you be looking for to start?
That's a good question. I mean, I think the number one thing that I think has been a driving force also for Finimize is from day one, we had a very clear mission of here's what we're trying to achieve. I think that historically, that's been more of an American approach to building businesses. I think now in Europe, people are starting to understand how crucial a mission is, because it helps you get the best talent. It helps when times are tough. It helps you get through it. There's a lot of secondary benefits to it. So I think having a clear mission. And then I think the other thing that there's 2 other things that I would add. The second one is this concept that other people have talked about at length as well already is, the analogy of surfing. When you're an entrepreneur, you're essentially a surfer and you need to find the right wave, but you need to find a wave. And so that wave, when it comes, you need to jump on it and give 150% to make sure that you stay on top of the wave. But if you don't have the wave, that basically means in business terms, you got the timing wrong. So there needs to be some sort of a zeitgeist component that you're hitting. And then, or VCs often ask for this, why now? That's maybe another way of thinking about it. And then the third piece is very much also now in this post zero interest rate world, being close to cash flows very early on is, I think, a healthy and good way of approaching a business from day one. Not maybe a couple of years in, as it was during the ZERP area, the zero interest rate policy. Those would be the 3 points I think that I would look for.
Only thing left for me to say is thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you as guest. Thank you for the Young Presidents Organization for helping us to get this interview. Best of luck, and let us know when you do your last step. This was admittedly one of the longest interviews we did so far this year. Thank you very much, Max.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That's all, folks. Find more news, streams, events, and interviews at www.startuprad.io. Remember, sharing is caring.